Give us just a second. We're connecting to Instagram. Mm-hmm. There we go.
Nope, it didn't go.
All right, try it again.
We are now live.
All right.
Hey guys, this is Michelle.
And this is Mark. And
this is Mark and Michelle.
There's a little piece of Lori right here. And it is Tuesday, November 12th. My birthday.
Happy birthday!
Happy birthday to me. And so we're going to continue on with what we do, the emotional symptoms.
Hi, Learning with Lily.
Yeah. The emotional symptoms of autism that I recovered from. And the first three that we did, or maybe it was four, I think it was four. The first one was lack of motivation, the inability to respond to others' emotions appropriately, the inability to see how much you mean to other people when you're autistic. Lori wants to be involved in this too. Lori, read number 3.
Thank you, Learning with Lily. I guess it's a she. Yeah. Sorry. Happy birthday.
Thanks. And then the fourth one, lack of expressive emotion or reaction. And because that's how NTs communicate, is by emotion and emotional reaction. They don't know what you're trying to say unless there's an emotional component to it. All right. So let's continue on with number 5, a lack of smiling. All right. This is a big one.
Yes.
Because so many times, and it annoyed me to no end. Oh, you got to smile more. Come on, smile. You know, it annoys me a little bit now, but now what happens when people say that is I laugh at them. So I'm more than smiling. I'm also being slightly offensive, I hope.
Hi, Taj.
Taj. But no, but now smiling is very natural for me. And it did not used to be the case.
No.
And Michelle always thought I was unfriendly, and other people thought I was unfriendly.
He was unfriendly.
And, well, I was because of the autism,
yes.
You know. And see, now I'm friendly. I'll say this. Living a life full of autism and being bullied for that whole 50 years, or the huge majority of it, I'll say I'm not friendly to people who aren't friendly to me. Because I think that's a fair, you know, why I grew up with the turn the other cheek. Yeah, sorry, I got no more cheeks left. So
you turn into butt cheeks.
Butthole.
You mooning them.
Yes, and so so now I will be friendly to people. You know, I live in a place where people are aggressively friendly. And that is kind of annoying, to be honest, because having grown up in a big city of 6 million people, Atlanta, Georgia, you don't do that there at all. And it's funny because I worked with lots of New Yorkers from Manhattan and the Bronx and Queens and all that. And I remember asking a couple of them, are you guys friendly up there? Oh, man, you don't do that friendly stuff up there. I remember one guy specifically saying, he's like, oh, no. He laughed at the same time. So, you know, it's I can be friendly, but if I'm not your kind of friendly, it doesn't mean I'm not friendly. So, but lack of smiling, and I've seen this in autistic adults when we did our support, when we ran a support group for autistic adults, it was not normal for any of them to smile. Every once in a while, someone might smile, but it was very rare.
Yeah. And
the truth is, a smile is a reaction to something you feel on the inside.
Right.
So, you know, if you don't feel happy on the inside, why be forced to smile? You know, or for me, in my case, because I'm quite sure I had alexithymia, for those of you who don't know, the inability to recognize and label your own emotions, because of that, for me, there wasn't much I was feeling on the inside except for anger and frustration. Why smile with that?
Yeah.
You know, so
well, we kind of think that's also, it's not just heavy metals. We think that's strep and viral as well.
Exactly, because I think the strep infection, you know, if you have or the viral infections, PANS or pandas.
Remember, medical medium says it's not strep, it's viral.
And I agree with them.
Yes.
because
And Mark found papers,
I
scientific papers.
have. And clearing out heavy metals, detoxing for those will clear up the pandas because you were depriving the viruses of the food they need to eat to multiply, or one of the foods. I mean, they eat other things too. But so when you deprive the viruses of that, they die off. When they die off, they release neurotoxins. When they release neurotoxins, those neurotoxins damage your nerves. So you have to repair the nerves too. So, but lack of smiling, huge thing. But now it's an internal thing. It's not a reaction to somebody.
It's not you going.
Yeah, exactly, because I used to do that a lot. And that was creepy to most folks.
It was,
because
there was nothing behind it.
Little kids didn't like it.
Yeah.
And I imagine that animals didn't like it either. It's probably why, you're just baring your teeth to them, to animals. And they probably consider you threatening when you're not smiling around your eyes too. But
for the podcasters, sorry, it's hard to show you
a smile around the eyes.
Well, it's pretty much a fake smile.
Right. It's more like baring your teeth than it is a smile. So, but anyway, lack of smiling is a huge thing, and it's not because the autistic person isn't friendly. It's just they don't feel the internal feeling to smile. That may not be for all of them. I'm quite sure, but it was for me. So, all right, how about the next one? Oh, limited emotional vocabulary. Okay. Let me explain what this means. A limited emotional vocabulary basically is, for me, I'll explain what it was for me. As I was recovering, I found that there were emotions that I never had felt before. Pure happiness, never felt that before, not until I recovered. Pure desire for someone or something, no, never felt that before. And you're like, how can a relationship be built on something that, how can a relationship be built on no desire? Pure faith. Because I just kept going, and so did she.
But he often asked, do you
like me? Do you love me?
Are you okay? Do you like me?
Are you going to leave me?
Yeah.
That kind of stuff, because I couldn't feel.
Yeah, and I was clueless. And I was like, why does he need this all the time?
Right. Well, and now we know why. So a limited emotional vocabulary for me was numerous emotions that I hadn't felt. So that limited what I had felt up until that point: anger and frustration. And
he often asked me, what does love mean? Mm-hmm. And I was like, well, and I would try really hard to explain it, but I couldn't understand why he didn't understand it.
It's difficult to explain a feeling.
He would look it up in the dictionary.
And spend years reading in other books and thinking about it and going, oh, okay, and I'm still not getting it.
Yeah.
And so
you can't get it unless you recover.
Right. A limited emotional vocabulary is basically literally that. Your emotions are so limited. You've felt so little that you have to expand your emotional vocabulary by feeling things as you recover. That's what happened to me. And for instance, blame. That was a very early emotion I felt. And
it's because it happens a lot.
It does. And and that was gross. Because it's somebody trying to shame you because they don't want to handle their own shame. Or guilt. Maybe that's it. I think it's guilt. Or maybe a combination of both. Right? Then here's another emotional vocabulary word I had to add. Maybe vocabulary emotion. Here we go. Being able to feel more than one emotion at a time. Like I was mad and laughing at her at the same time. That was bizarre. That was a weird juxtaposition of two feelings.
It was fun to watch him feel that.
Yeah, because I would go, that's how it felt. It was waves of, yeah, exactly. And so it looked funny and it felt funny. So being able to have new emotions come on was really awesome. But then at the same time, I realized that a lot of them I didn't know how to regulate.
Well, like today, you had to go to the vet with a sick kitty.
Yeah. Well, and
you probably had some emotions that you hadn't had.
Right. and Michelle was worried, and so I was feeling her stuff and my stuff, and thanks for the butt, man. And
He just got mooned.
Yeah, I did, with a bunch of fur.
See, he's going to make his presence known now that we're
He is.
talking
Hey,
about him.
Say hi. But anyway, so limited emotional vocabulary, that is a developmental gap. In fact, the older you get with autism, the more of a developmental gap you're going to have. But, you know, I think that it may be the more severe your autism, you may have a larger developmental gap than somebody who had milder autism and recovered.
He's blinking at everyone.
Are you blinking at it? Say hi to them. They're all saying hi. So let's move on to the next one. Words of emotion aren't understood.
Oh, I love my favorite story about propaganda.
Tell that story.
Okay, so we were working with a woman who was, this was when we were doing gaps, so we were trying to help her, and it actually did help her. She wasn't going to recover completely on it. We now know that.
Yeah.
You can't recover on gaps. But it helped her enough that she was able to go to school.
Mm-hmm.
And before that, she was a recluse.
Uh-huh.
It just buried.
Absolutely.
Anyway, we were at her house, and she made us a cup of tea. And she said, do you want to see
the propaganda that came in the box?
Came in the box. And I giggled because that's a funny word to use instead of advertisement. It's propaganda. And she said, I never understand why people laugh when I say that word, but I use it because people laugh.
Mm-hmm.
And I told her it's because the connotations, the emotional connotations behind propaganda are political,
and
typically,
almost always negative.
And negative.
Mm-hmm.
And to make that go with tea is funny.
Mm-hmm. Because usually tea isn't political, nor is it negative.
So words of emotion aren't understood. That's an example. What you got?
For instance, I heard this, is she a cousin? This is New Albuquerque, Bonnie?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So a cousin of hers has a son who's on the spectrum. And he's married. His wife, he and his wife, they live.
Do you mean she has a son-in-law?
Oh, is it a son-in-law?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Excuse me, son-in-law.
Just, whatever.
Well, you got to get that right. And so he's on the spectrum. So his wife, Michelle's cousin's daughter, being typical NT, would use emotional words like "I'm angry" or "I feel happy today" or "I love you." Or his response, and I used to respond like this somewhat, just not to this extent, but don't use feeling words with me. They make me mad, and I imagine that some of your loved ones on the spectrum have said the same thing. And so emotional words, I feel distraught. That is not a word people normally use to mean they feel near depressed. And it's not just unhappy, it's a little more than unhappy. See, I've had to learn all this stuff as I've recovered. There are fine grades of emotion.
Yes.
And we have words in the language for those emotions.
Yes.
And so those words can be angering or absolutely downright confusing or totally misunderstood by an autistic brain. And for those of you out there who have autistic brains, believe me, there are huge differences between those words. They seem like fine gradations, but NTs can tell you that each one of those emotional words means a very different emotion. And I'm finding out now that that's the case.
Yeah.
So emotional words aren't understood. For instance, upset. That could mean a few things, but generally it means that people are a little bit unhappy, or maybe a little more than that. But if it's a funeral, see, it depends on context. If it's a funeral, if people are upset, that's a nice way of saying they're totally destroyed and really unhappy that their loved one died. Because emotions can depend on context too. And you have to know the context. And it can be difficult for an autistic brain to know the context. So emotional words are sometimes not understood. All right, let's see. The next one.
This is a good one.
Lack of awareness and understanding of emotional landscape. Okay. Now, this is interesting. I'll use funeral as an example. I went to the funerals of both of my grandmothers and my grandfather. At none of those three funerals did I cry. I understood everybody else was upset. I was not. And now, that being the case, again, with the alexithymia, the inability to recognize and label my own emotions, that makes a big difference in how you feel in any situation. But recognizing an emotional landscape. Here's a good idea. Or here's a good story or a good example. You're in high school. You walk up. There you see a group of girls, and you walk up. And you're autistic. That's trouble right there. Because, first of all, you walk up to the group of girls. You don't know what's going on with them. You don't know how they are as people. You could be walking up to a group of girls that are going to do nothing but deride you, make fun of you, ridicule you, and basically emotionally bully you. And you don't know it until you walk up and that happens. That happened to me so often. But then, who knows? You'll see another group of girls. You'll walk up to them, and one of them will know that you're on the spectrum. And then all of a sudden, you become an immediate object of affection and cuteness. Because then all of a sudden you're, he's got autism. Oh, isn't he cute? And they take great interest in you up until they don't. If you can't recognize the difference between those two groups, you've got a problem. And can't see past your butt, bro. And if you can't tell the difference between bullies and people who actually like you, then that's a problem. And what that is the recognition of emotional context. You may notice people staring at you. I did numerous times, but I didn't know why. When I saw people staring at me, I'd say, hi. Well, that opened me up for being made fun of quite often. And you're already awkward enough as an autistic person so that you easily stand out. And not being able to recognize what prevailing emotion is going on in any group of people opens you up to a lot more trouble. So here's another example. You see a girl crying and her friends are standing around. Now, you may not know why she's crying, but then you go up and you just blurt something out that you think is helpful. Well, because you don't understand the emotional context, you wind up offending her and her friends. And then all of a sudden you've been labeled, oh, well, we don't want that guy around because he's just says creepy. Yeah, he says creepy stuff or he does stupid stuff and he hurts people's feelings, right? God knows that happened to me a lot of times. And even as an adult, into my 40s, it wasn't until recovery happened that I was able to start recognizing emotional context that I can make it, that I wouldn't make social gaffes like that. And so a lack of awareness and an understanding of emotional context of any social group causes a lot of trouble for you. It doesn't cause a lot of trouble for the NTs usually. Sure, they might be upset, but they get over it. And that was one thing that was really comforting. Even though I have lots of emotion now, and I really do now, I know it goes away.
Right.
And
nothing stays the same.
Nothing stays the same, and that's nice to know, because if I'm offended in one moment, 5 minutes later, that's going to be gone, and it will be replaced by another emotion. Probably, odds are, a much happier one. one that I like to have. So that's a great thing about it. But emotional context is everything, because it determines what is going on in any social group. You don't go into a funeral and blurt out, "Oh, he's in a better place," when people don't actually believe that, when those people in that funeral don't. It's because you've made a huge social gaffe there. And or like the one I did at work I guess it's been about 13 years ago now. We had a new girl come. She talked all the time. Oh, so much. Well, she was actually a nice person, but she talked so often. I finally said, "Do you always talk that much?" Standing up in front of everybody at the desk, in front of customers, in front of, and her. And so she didn't talk to me for a good long while. And after a while we made up, but how inappropriate was that? Who knows what her reasons were for talking? She felt insecure and just wanted to be as personal as possible. Who knows? But outright asking her, "Do you always talk that much?" didn't help the situation at all.
Welcome to my world.
Right? Well, that's no longer your world.
No. But it was for 20-something years.
Right? Because I've seen this happen often, and I do this. Folks with autism tend to think that they know the world so well, and they are going to point out to you as failing NTs what you need to do to fix yourself. Seen it happen? Happened recently on an international stage. But one thing I've learned about NTs is they have way too much emotion to be upset about one person yelling at them. And again,
well, you also talked about there being a buffer that you didn't have as an autistic person.
Well, everything felt raw when I was autistic. Now that I have emotions that come from the inside, that it's like a bubbling pot of, like a bubbling tossed salad of emotions. Those emotions are always going on. But you know what the buffer is? You have an instant reaction to something. If somebody gets nasty, you get mad and you respond right away. When I was autistic, I just froze up. And a lot of people with autism do that when people pick at them or bully them or this kind of stuff. I mean, it's difficult to respond. Now it's not. That buffer of emotion is my own emotion being able to help me defend myself and respond to threats. Now, not everything is a threat. For instance, like the kid the other day at the store pointing at me and motioning me to come over there. And I looked at him like, "Are you insane?" And then he points at somebody well past me. Never mind that the kid was looking me directly in the eye. Then he points way past me, and apparently it was his dad. Wasn't a threat, but it was kind of offensive, But then no words were exchanged.
Yeah.
No, "Hey, oh, sorry, I was pointing at my dad," But not everything is a threat. So I've had to learn that too. And been kind of tough because an autistic brain can be paranoid. Oh, I was. So anyway, well, that's the 4 things we got for today, and we've got 3 more for tomorrow. And
not tomorrow, because I won't be here.
That's right, we won't be here.
I will be gone.
Thursday will be our next live at 12:30, and continue with the celery juice, continue with the heavy metal detox smoothie, continue with the lemon water. Definitely go to www.healyourautism.com and get the book Buried Alive, One Man's Journey Out of Autism.
It has this
includes the symptoms list and what we suspect the causes are. And then continue to the next page, www.healyourautism.com/buy the book. That's BUY the book. And that book is Heal Your Autism's Guide, Do-It-Yourself Guide. Healing begins in your kitchen.
Your kitchen.
And it's our book on how we detoxed. And there's a bunch of freebies that go with the purchase of the book. And so definitely purchase the book. And then
on the next page,
if you have more questions, which I'm sure you will, on the next page, we have group coaching, $57 a month. But then there's a bunch of freebies that come with that. So definitely purchase that because you'll need it.
And if you want one-on-one, send us a message.
And remember, Thursday will be our next live. So we'll see you Thursday at 12:30. All right, guys.
All right. See you.